Oh, hello, Abram. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, that's good.
Uh,
Welcome. Well,
Thank you very much.
welcome to RBC. It's
Thank you very much.
delightful to see you. I hope you're well.
I'm okay. I'm well.
Okay,
Yes.
brilliant. I think we're going to start straight away. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, because a few people are waiting.
Okay.
Uh,
Very good.
yeah. Okay, just a few questions really. What is the People's Coalition of for civil action?
The People's Coalition for Civil Action is not a political party,
Okay.
and it is not a normal civil society. It is a political action group that aims at creating sufficient pressure on the government to cause about change. So that is what the coalition for civil action is, and of course, it is a coalition. It is made up of a number of organizations and individuals.
Oh, I see. So on that at that level, how many South Sudanese you think, and amongst the South Sudanese leaders and influential people, uh, how many of them now are part of the coalition?
Well, we say all the 12 million people of South Sudan are members of the coalition, but in a sense of its membership, uh, we cannot give you an exact figure of people who have registered with the People's Coalition for Civil Action, but we have massive support from our people at the grassroots and also from diaspora and within the political class and also within the military. So we have a lot of support across all the sectors of South Sudan.
Okay, brilliant. Um, the only obvious people now, the people who have a profile, are the people who have signed up, and we've seen the documents and your release. Could you tell me their names again and who they are, and
Well,
where about they are and why did they sign?
all right. So there were four people who signed the declaration of the coalition on the 30th of July, 2021. And among them was our colleague, Governor Kwela Agurkwel, who is
Okay,
now detained by the government of South Sudan, remains in custody at the Blue House. And then you sign on behalf of South Sudan Intellectuals Group.
okay,
And then you have Rajab Mohandis, uh, uh, signing as a representative of civil society. Raja Mohandis is obviously a civil society leader and who signed the 2018 peace agreement, and he's a member of the RJ mechanism now. So he signed for the civil society. Then you have Edward Akec, who is a member of diaspora living in the United States. He signed for uh, representing our people in diaspora, and
okay,
myself, Abraham Awolich. I signed for think tanks and academia. So those people who signed obviously were selected to sign on behalf of others because of the risk that is associated with the document. In a normal democratic country, there would be no risk at all making a
correct,
declaration
correct,
to be engaged as a citizen in the affairs of your country. But in South Sudan, where dissenting voices are not allowed, we saw a risk in doing that. So those of us who felt brave enough were able to sign, but were able to tell 10 other people away and say, we don't want you to get to sign this document and get in trouble. So you stay out. So only 4 people decided to sign. Initially, it were 3, um, but Akec later on said he wanted to sign as well on behalf of people in diaspora, and we saw the logic behind that, and so
Mhm.
he came in to sign. So we were many in hundreds, but we only decided to pick representatives to sign.
Yes, oh, that's excellent, Abraham. Abraham Awolich, you are relatively young and not very well known to South Sudan. I'm sure you are known in certain circles, but not widely known. You are an upcoming personality. Could you tell our viewers who Abraham Awolich is?
Yes, thank you very much. I would be happy to do that. Abraham Awolich comes from South Sudan, from Lakes, uh, but joined the Sudan People's Liberation Army and Movement in 1989, first registering on March 22nd, 1989.
Mhm.
Uh, at around the age of 10, I was very young when I joined, and was trained in the Dima military camp and graduated from there around 19 at the end of 1989 and 1990. And by 1991, obviously, Ethiopia was in trouble, so we had to leave. We returned to South Sudan and we were stationed at in a place called Pakok, which
Mhm.
is very close to Jabarad in current state of Jonglei, or to be specific, in the Pibor administrative area, where we
Yes.
stayed for about a year or 2 years, and later on moved to Kapoita. And because of the conflict, we had to leave Kapoita to go to Narus, where we ended up going to Kenya as refugees and settling in a place called Kakuma. And later in 2001, some of us were resettled to the United States. So that's where I went, and went to school there and stayed there for about 10 years, roughly about 8 years in reality.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then returned to South Sudan by April 2011, and have been staying there since then. And then I briefly worked for the Ministry of Defense as a deputy director for policy planning. And then we co-founded the Sudd Institute, and I became the administrator of the institute from May 2012 until 2019. Then I became the managing director after Professor Joke. So that has been my work since then. But I was also involved with the South Sudan National Dialogue Secretariat, providing both technical and intellectual backstopping to the leadership of Maulana Abel Alier and Angelo Beda, Honorable Bono Malwal, and Dr. Francis Deng, and many others who were in the steering committee. So I was a key person within the South Sudan National Dialogue. Yeah, so I think that would be sufficient.
Yes, you were a prominent person then in the area of civil society. You were a civil society leader. You are a technocrat. What frustrated you so much that you have now become an activist, effectively facing the government head on?
Well, we have watched. My first experience with the government of Southern Sudan was, as I mentioned, in April and May 2011. I was hired together with 48 other consultants to carry out an evaluation looking at the performance of the government of Southern Sudan from 2005 to 2011. 2011, and the objective was to assess what were the strengths of the institutions that have been established, the systems, the structures, and to make recommendations on what the government of South Sudan, independent South Sudan, would look like. And so, looking into what the government was doing and what was going on through that study, we became very concerned that the country may not be going in the right direction. A lot of resources were wasted, policies were made haphazardly, and there was very little accountability. So that is in fact what motivated us to establish the Sudd Institute, try to provide technical support to the government through policy advice. So that created an impression on me, and then as time went, the country descended into the conflict, and we were among the first people through the Sudd Institute to discover that the country was heading to war. And so on the 23rd of July 2013, we published the first report on the internal crisis going on within the SPLM. And we went around the whole of Juba trying to find people to stand up to challenge the parties so that they don't take the country to war. And we could find not very many people. And so the country went to war right in our presence and in our eyes. And we felt that at that time the country was failed. It was definitely a leadership failure. Things could not have gone out of hand. But that is history now. The conflict started, and we try to provide background to those who are going to do the reconciliation or mediation as to what factors led to the conflict. And all these things are documented through our website at the Sudd Institute. Now, in 2015, there was a peace agreement. There were two agreements that were signed. These were the Arusha agreement for the reunification of the SPLM, and the August 2015 agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, ARSES. These two agreements were signed, and we were hoping that they will pull the country out of the conflict, and that the SPLM definitely would need to put its acts together and move the country forward, and that the RRCs was going to end the war. But unfortunately, none of that happened. The agreement for the reunification of the SPLM remains unimplemented, largely because of political will. The President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar are not willing to implement that agreement. Likewise, in July 2016, 3 months after the implementation of the agreement started, there was a dogfight at the State House. And that dogfight was totally unwarranted. It was staged. It was not accidental. Both parties had prepared for it. And obviously the country went back to war. And that created massive, massive crisis in the country, especially nearly the entire region of Equatoria was emptied. People left their homes, especially central Equatoria and part of eastern Equatoria. People left their homes and they flocked to Uganda. And it didn't take long before we could register over 1 million of our own citizens running away. So that conflict, the country was almost on the verge of collapse, and that it was going to be nearly what Thomas Hobbes described as the state of nature, where every man is against every man. So that created a lot of fear for those of us who did not want to see South Sudan falling apart. So we use our influence through the office of president under Minister Mayik Ayi Deng to push for this idea of the national dialogue, which President Salva accepted, and we worked through Mayik to develop the concept note for the national dialogue. And we have to thank Mayik. He provided leadership at that time that enabled the process to move forward. And of course, there were key leaders in that process, such as Honorable Kwal Manyang was among the people who pushed for this. So our hope was that the national dialogue was going to pull the country together, a country that was falling apart. And we put a lot of efforts into it. And our people went to all the counties of South Sudan to talk to people. What was going on? Why are we fighting? Why is the country falling apart? And people spoke. We gathered the voices of people through video, voice, and written documents. So those things have been documented and they were analyzed. And they were categorized into four broad issues. Some of the issues were governance-related issues, others were economic, some were security, and others were mundane social relations issues. So this dialogue went on for 4 years, and the people of South Sudan actually entered into an agreement in Freedom Hall through resolutions. They resolve a number of things, including the state structure. How do we structure the state? People talked about federalism. People talk about the number of states. People talk about term limits, and so on. We think that that document has provided a clear roadmap resolving the interactable conflict that we have in South Sudan. And obviously, a deeper question was asked that despite the fact that we have internal issues as citizens, what has our state done? And through that deeper analysis, the leadership of the national dialogue identified two critical issues. One of them is the issue of leadership failure. They said that the country has not been led well, and the SPLM leaders quickly turned around after independence to compete for political power, and therefore, as a result of political power struggle, a political stalemate was created, which has crippled the country. People are making a zero-sum calculation. It is either me or nothing. And this is what has created the conflict. So they made a proposition that in order to resolve this issue of leadership failure and political deadlock, which is predicated on two people, President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar, it is better for South Sudan to transition into a democratic election with the support of international community, especially the African Union and the UN. And in that democratic transition, both President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar will not participate in that election. And they made a number of other recommendations. So all these things were compiled, and then they were given to President Kiir, who initiated the national dialogue to implement. And obviously, the president became very angry why the national dialogue recommended that he and Dr. Riek Machar should step aside. So he decided not to receive the report of the national dialogue for a number of months. The process ended in November 2020, but he only, after a lot of efforts were made, he only agreed to receive the report in April this year. And he shelved it immediately after it was given to him. because one of the recommendations in that report was that he should create what they call follow-up and implementation mechanism. Should have created a body that will now follow up the implementation of the national dialogue. None of that has happened. So that is one. So the national dialogue, a mechanism through which the people of South Sudan have actually discussed and resolved some of their grievances, has been shelved. Their voices have been ignored. Two, the peace agreement, which was signed on the 12th of September 2018, is supposed to be implemented. We are now reaching the third year in about a month. The third year since it was signed. It was supposed to be implemented, and the implementation should have started with the integration of the armed forces. None of this has happened. The process should also have been, the parliament should have been sworn in, and nearly 3 years have gone, and the country was operating without parliament. And it has just been sworn in now, and we give ourselves credit. We say it is because the People's Coalition for Civil Action started to talk. The government felt the threat, and they saw the need to implement. And it was the same when the Young Council of Elders issued some statements calling for the implementation of the national dialogue resolutions. That's when the issue of Malakal, the Upper Nile governor, was resolved. So it became apparent that the peace agreement that was signed in 2018, which was aimed as the mechanism for peace, is also falling apart. Falling apart because the parties that signed the agreement, the SPLMIO and SOA, and the other political parties and FDs plus the government, they are no longer the same parties that signed the agreement in 2018. All the opposition parties have been weakened. SOA, for example, lost an important member, Bogasoro. He defected to the government, and that is effort of the government to lure him back to the party. And Dr. Riek Machar's party is split up into 3 factions now. There is someone called Tut Duer. He declared himself a chairman a couple of weeks ago, and 3 days ago, Gadwij Dwal declared himself the chairman of SPLM IO. Excuse me, and then Dr. Riek Machar himself. And so we became concerned and realized that, okay, the country is much closer to war than it is to peace. And we felt that after 10 years of our independence was celebrated, and there was no celebration in Juba because of fear. We sat down and reviewed the last decade of our independence, and there was nothing much we could console ourselves with from the last 10 years. It has been death, war, displacement, hunger, despair that has characterized the last 10 years of our independence. So we felt that as citizens, the national dialogue is not going to go through. The peace agreement is falling apart. Country is likely to go back to war. We felt that we should not allow this to happen. It is time for citizens to speak and to tell the warring parties or the parties, the agreement and the government, that enough is enough. We need our country back. We cannot afford another 10 years of wasted efforts. We need to get back to the democratic path. We need to get back to peace. We need to get back to development. And the peace agreement that was meant to do this is falling apart just in front of us. So all of these things have frustrated us. In addition to that, on the economic front, from 2011, from 2005 to 2011, South Sudan made $20 billion from oil. $20 billion from oil, from the share of 50%. That $20 billion, brother Mawan, if you come to South Sudan, there is nothing we can show for it. There is not a single national highway. The only highway that is there is between Numili and Juba, but it was constructed by the United States of America. There is not a single bridge on the Nile, which runs the entire length of our country. The only bridge that we have there was the one inaugurated by Abel Alier in 1974, or was it 77? I'm not very sure. And it was supposed to last for 30 to 40 years. It keeps breaking down every now and then. And $20 billion is nowhere to be seen. There are no highways. There are no the Juba Teaching Hospital, which is the biggest national hospital, was not built. It is only the Chinese who recently actually erected some buildings, but they are empty. They are not working. There are no facilities in there. Yeah, so it is. So the money has been. The money, I could say, has been squandered. There is nothing to show for it, and the economy has tanked. Everything is deteriorating. Our citizens go for months or even a year without getting paid, those who work for the government, especially soldiers. And the diplomats have gone now for 26 months without pay. Some of them have their embassies closed down and got evicted, being ashamed just to represent their own country. Yeah, so all these things, if you put them together, plus the persistent insecurity at the grassroots, communities are allowed to fighting each other, and weapons leave government armories only to find themselves in the cattle camps. Heavy machinery, heavy guns, machine guns like RPGs, like PKMs, even 12.4, 14.5 caliber gun. They go to the cattle camp and they are used for people to kill each other. Cattle raiding, child abduction, and regular communal violence. The government is unable to arrest all of that. And so we feel that we are losing our country slowly. And lately, the president made an alliance with the former NCP members who have come back to South Sudan and took over the government of South Sudan. And those who liberated South Sudan, leaders of the SPLM, has been sidelined. In fact, the SPLM is not in charge of the government in Juba. It is the NCP that is running Juba. NCP is dead in Khartoum, but it is alive and well in Juba. It is doing very well. And it is the one that is running our country. And through that, a lot of dirty international loans are brought from the Middle East to finance the activities of NCP, masquerading to be the government of South Sudan. So all these things have frustrated us, and we said enough is enough. We can no longer rely on our leaders to pull the country out of the current crisis. We have given them 16 years to do so, and they have failed. And so, as Einstein would say, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you expect different results, you must be insane. And so we don't want to be insane. We are not insane. We are sane. We don't want to do the same thing over and over again for another 10 years and expect different results. The result will exactly be the same or worse. So that is why we have risen now and say enough is enough. The people of South Sudan should rise up, take their power back, and return the country to democracy. And that Dr. Riek Machar and President Kiir and others who have a hand in the destruction of South Sudan and the fact that they have divided our communities and made them to fight each other, the time is over for them to go home. And we need to return our country to the people who owned it, and through peaceful transition. That's what we are asking for, and that's what frustrated us.
That's brilliant. Could you give us a taste of the extent of corruption? Because you are close to the affairs of the government, as you said from the very beginning. Just give us snapshots. Keep them short because we've got a few more questions. But
All
how
right.
bad is corruption, and what examples can you give us?
So there are the corruption is multifaceted in South Sudan. There is corruption that comes through contracts. Contracts are made through backdoor channels, and I can tell you that the president is directly involved in this process. The president now controls all the money of South Sudan. If you need to get money for medical treatment, it must be approved by the president himself. So nothing happens without the approval of the president. So contracts are made. For example, somebody would make a contract to supply the army with food or with munition or whatever it is, and that contract, the money is given, but the nothing is delivered, and then those who are responsible for on the side of the army would go and sign papers and say food has been delivered, when in fact nothing is delivered, and then the money is taken through the Ministry of Finance, and people who delivered the money are paid, yet nothing is delivered, and then they go and distribute that money.
And the government will take, and the president will take a share of this money?
Absolutely. That is one. The other side is that other contracts are made, and for example, there was a small building constructed in Juba for kidney. Somebody called Ashraf decided that it is he wants to donate a kidney medical center to the people of South Sudan, which he did, only to end up causing us about 400 million a donation. Somehow we don't know how that how a donation became a bill to the government. Yeah, so these are some of the issues that we have seen, and beside that, some of the oil money is sold in advance. People go to the Middle East, borrow money, and sell the oil. For example, I'm told by those in the oil sector that the oil we have has already been sold until 2027, and the money has been taken. Where is the money? Soldiers are not paid. Diplomats are not paid. Who took the money and why? So this is another form of corruption. So there is something called pre-sale. So oil is sold in advance, and because you cannot track the money that is given to you in advance, money can only be tracked once the oil is sold. That money goes into the black box. Nobody knows, and it disappears. And we hear stories of people going to Dubai to go and distribute that money and deposit it in their banks, and then they come home. And whatever little is brought to Juba, people rush to the airport to distribute that. And A goes home with his box, B goes home with his box, and nothing goes to the central bank. which is why the currency is depreciating a lot. We are not getting any hard currency. So, there is a lot more that I can tell you. That the contracts don't follow the procurement procedures which are laid out in our laws, because the president is directly running things. The Ministry of Finance is simply a cashier. It's no longer a planning. It is not a treasurer. It is a cashier. They just issue cash and money being demanded for different things that have not been delivered. For example, our airport, the Juba International Airport, was constructed. They started constructing it in 2011. We probably have paid for it 200 times, and this is not complete. The buildings are there; they are stuck. And every year, you look in our budget, you will see a line for the airport. For example, in 2018, there was 200 million line for airport. In the airport, nothing happened. We ended up borrowing money from China only to finish one terminal. The other terminals are there since 2011. They were supposed to be open on our Independence Day, but nothing has happened. So really, I can go on and on. It is a disaster. And listen, the Juba Rumbeg Road uh, in 2016 or 2015, we actually went for the grand opening launch of the construction of that road. I even went and joined the dancers myself from Lake State, and only to have no road. Nothing started. It started recently, but then there were a lot of stories about what happened. And so you hear now the Juba Bo Road is going to cost us about $2 billion. And it is a road that was not planned and it was not approved by any parliament. But because there are contractors that are affiliated with powerful people, they simply said we are going to construct this road, and then things were done retrospectively to try to make it look legal, and a lot of money is being wasted on it, and the road is unlikely to arrive in Bor. If it did, it will not get to Malakal before you spend $10 billion on it. So really, to the people of South Sudan, we can't take it anymore. It is getting outrageous. Um, we should stop it. It is a lot worse than what I'm telling you. It is far worse than that.
Yes, it's really shocking. Before we continue, Brother Awolich, I want to introduce you to my colleague, David Mabur Chadar, who also will be asking you a few questions shortly.
Thank you, my brother Mabur. Nice to meet you. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Abraham Awolich.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you
is
very
an
much.
honor to have you tonight, this morning, this afternoon, everywhere.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It is my pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. After the grim picture that you've just painted regarding the records with wars and now corruption, the question really arises because we know we don't often talk about it. But where is Salva Kiir that we knew, the revolutionary that fought, and we have his images when he fought throughout the liberation period? What has happened, especially for people who knew him? What is the explanation of what has now befallen the country under his leadership?
Well, I can tell you that I totally agree with you. Salva Kiir is a hero. He's a war hero. He's a man who fought with dignity and with honor, and provided a lot of leadership. And you could say, to a larger share of our success is owed to him. And if it wasn't him, things would not have been so good for the people of South Sudan. And he also, after the death of John Garang, people were despair. People didn't know that he could carry on with the mission, but he did. He actually pressed on, ignoring agitations from Khartoum, trying to lure him into fighting, and consolidating the people of South Sudan, spending a lot of money on militias to accept being integrated and to join the government of South Sudan. And he raised the flag of the Republic of South Sudan. So up to that point, Salva Kiir is considered a great leader. Unfortunately, after the independence and the beginning of internal agitation within the SPLM, President Salva Kiir felt that he was betrayed by his own comrades. You know, those of Pagana Mom, Deng Alor, and all the SPLM leaders who rose up to challenge him in 2013. He got so angry and got so mad that at that point, that is when he started to take a wrong turn. He started to surround himself with people whose objectives were not clear. And these were the former NCP leaders, to fill the vacuum of his friends and comrades who clashed with him. And those people took advantage of President Kiir, and they used him to achieve their own ends. One of their objective is to completely destroy the SPLM. And I'm sad to tell you, I think they have succeeded in doing so. The SPLM
and our president is happy as long as he is safe, as his leadership.
I believe so. And also, they wanted to destroy the SPLA because for them, those who were in the NCP, they had no chance of claiming leadership in South Sudan without the liberation credentials. But so for them to succeed, they have to destroy that history and put it in a dustbin. And now you can level the playing field in South Sudan, and they could bribe their way into leadership. And we have seen this. We are seeing this now with Tutkau and others. Yeah, so that is where the president took the wrong turn. He became apprehensive and suspicious of his own comrades. And he relied more and more on security, suppressing those people who would want to talk, and relying more and more on non-entities. He switched into politics, or bringing people closer to him who have no constituencies, people who are not popular on the ground. And those who are popular, he kept them at a distance, because he fears those who are popular could agitate and bring people to bring pressure on him. So he keeps a political space where if you feel that you are really in bad shape, you have to go and kneel down before him, and then he would give you an appointment in the government. And then you go on for a while. If he doesn't like you anymore, he will bring in your enemy into the government so that you can collide with that person right away. So he has been using a divide and rule kind of a method. So the president drifted really starting from 2013 up to now, and it is getting worse with time. And because he has no party to hold him accountable, and all the parliament, for example, he handpicked speakers and other critical leaders of the parliament. There is no one in the country who can rise up and tell him, Mr. President, what you are doing is wrong. Stop. He became a ruler of decrees. He issues decrees every week, every day, and no consultation. He does things without consultation. And so he is abandoned. The man is very much on his own. He's a very lonely man. There are no leaders around him in South Sudan. People who are around him there are fake, are people who are non-entities who can tell him all lies all day, make joke with him, but no one will tell him, as the president, what you are doing is wrong. You say that tomorrow you are out. So that is the Salva Kiir we have today. So we had Salva Kiir until 2013. The Salva Kiir we have now is a shell of his former self. Is not the leader that we knew.
That is tragic. I will now allow my brother Mabur to ask the new question. Let's make the questions, the answers a bit shorter. We are very excited about what you are saying, and it's very detailed, and I'm sure it's absolutely wonderful. But we have to finish at some point, and also people cannot watch it fully later. Many people are busy, and if it's long, they switch off. So we have a number of questions, and Mabur is going to come now with a question about the region and the support for you, perhaps.
Actually, Marwan and Abraham Awolich, I prefer to, because I joined a bit later, so you, Marwan, continue with the questions, and I will ask two questions only two questions at the end.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's do that. Just hold on to your questions, and I hope that I don't ask them. Them, but
no, if you ask them, then we will be fine.
Come up with more. Come up with more.
No, it's okay.
Thanks a lot, Babu.
So you go ahead.
What support does the coalition, the People's Coalition, have in the region and internationally now, diplomatically? Because that's a very important factor.
Well, if I can tell you, the coalition is only about 10 days old. And so it is a very new organization. But I can tell you that we have support of almost all the Western countries. We have engaged them, and they say any democratic exercise by the people of South Sudan that doesn't lead to violence is something that they can support. And so as long as we remain committed to non-violence political exercise, they would stand by the coalition. And as long as we remain advocate of democracy and peace and unity of the people of South Sudan, they stand with the coalition. Within the region, we are just engaging the region now. We have not gotten a proper assessment to know whether we have support. What we do have, however, in the region, we have a support of the civil society across the region. And we also are getting support through the media around the region. But the regional governments, we are yet to get a clear picture. We have just started engaging.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes.
There is currently a very large number, in fact, an embarrassing number of opposition groups. Some of them are peaceful, some of them are armed. Have you chosen the right time? Have you picked up the right time to launch? Because how do you stand out amongst them?
Well, I think we stand out very clearly because we are doing something different. We are not, first of all, our aim is not to capture political power in Juba. We are not a political party. So our intention is not to capture power. Our intention is to create political pressure to allow the country to make a transition. And we are doing this non-violent. We are just talking. We are just mobilizing our people. And so the power that we have is not the power of a gun, but the power of the people who are supporting us. So I think we have chosen the right time because the country is very close to returning to war. And we think that instead of returning to war, if we can create enough political pressure within the country to have a peaceful transition, in which Dr. Riek Machar and President Salva Kiir do not participate, then that we can avert that war. We can simply tell the people who are fighting that there is no need to fight. Now the political space is open for all to participate in and to prepare for elections. The national dialogue actually gave President Kiir and Salva Kiir a good option. They were asked simply to tell the people of South Sudan that in the coming election, they will not participate and that they can complete the current transition. And they turned that down. We still feel that they could still do the same. If they say that we are not going to run for the next election, allow us to complete this transition, which is 1 year away, then the people can make an agreement on that, and that could end the war actually. And so what we are asking President Kiir and Riek Machar is simple: either they step down now, or if we have if it can be negotiated, and this require the participation of all the political forces, including those who are outside. If they can say we are not going to participate in the next election, then we can agree on when they can step down before the elections happen. So this we believe will save the country from war. Otherwise, we are going back to war. That is what we are closer to now than we are to peace. And so we stand out among the other forces because we are a broad-based grassroots movement of people of South Sudan who want to agitate for change, not with the aim of capturing state power, but with the aim of preventing war, and we are doing that non-violently.
And if the country goes to war, who will be fighting home this time? Because Riek forces are fighting amongst themselves as we speak.
What I can tell you that it will be unpredictable. Even those who are in Juba now you could have a couple more warlords, because it has become apparent, and this is something that I have not talked about. South Sudan has a revolving door. We have been rewarding rebellion, and this is the hallmark and trademark of President Kiir's leadership. You rebel against him, you run away, and you come back, and you are given ranks, you are given money, you are given cars, you are accommodated comfortably in hotels, and you stay for 2 more years. And if you finish your money, you go back to the bush and you come back. And so and people, once you go to the bush, you go and give yourself whatever military rank of your choice. So the former bodyguards of SPLA commanders came back as generals now, and their own commanders are subordinate to them. Can you imagine what kind of army that would be? Yeah, so we think that the dimension of the war would be so complicated this time, because you have Riek Machar on one side, you have President Kiir on the other, you have Gadwijdual on the other side, and you have Thomas Shirilo, Paul Malong, and even Oya Idenga Jack had threatened recently that he may put on his uniform because he now has. Yeah, so and you have Stephen Boy Rolnyang. So we really are not going to have a country if it is allowed to continue this way. The best thing to do is to arrest all of that, and there is one solution to this. The exit of Dr. Riek Machar and President Kiir from the political scene would definitely create a momentum toward peace in the country.
But that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, for someone who's been fighting for the last 3 years, 4 years to get to Juba, when Kiir is no longer there, is it not the time they're going to say, okay, let's walk into Juba now? Why would they fear you or trust you when they did not trust Kiir Mayardit?
Well, the main problem is that what are they fighting for? For example, Simon Gadwijdual, what is he fighting for? The SPLM-IO initially broke away from the SPLM party, fighting over power, to capture state power. capturing state power has proven very difficult. With or without Salva Kiir, there is an army in South Sudan. And that army is not an army of President Salva Kiir, it's the army of the Republic of South Sudan. And there is national security of South Sudan and the police. Those people are not going anywhere. They will be there. In fact, we think that they should play a significant role in the transition so that they can keep peace and security.
Brilliant.
But we will then tell those guys that if you are looking for political power, do it no more. Now the political space is open, and you can come and compete. Go to your constituencies and mobilize and run for election. You want to be president, you want to be MP. The power of the people of South Sudan shall no longer be divided in the market, which is the case with the current RRCs. Can you imagine parliamentarians? People go to the market to look for supporters because you have been given a share. Some parties, for example, OPP, they have no members in some states. So they go and say, if you join us, we are going to make you an MP. And people show up. And those who show up obviously are not the normal politicians of that place. And they end up being the MPs representing those places. So the power of the people is being divided in the market like sweets, like biscuits. And that is shameful. So we need to end all of that and return the power back to people. The other thing we want to do, which we believe could bring about change, is to actually put the traditional leaders back in power at the level of the counties and payams and bomas. Those are the right people to run those institutions. And the claim that they are not educated and therefore they will not run the country is a lie. For our entire life, there was no state in our lives. It is the traditional leaders who have managed our country for so long, and there is no reason why we should now say they cannot do it. So we think that if the chiefs are in charge of counties and payams and bomas, they would be able to bring pressure to bear or influence the youth to end the
because they have popularity among
exactly
the civil population. Yeah.
So then you restore the integrity of the government, because the reason people respect government is because people believe that first of all it has authority and power. So if you mess around with it, it will make your life difficult. Two, government is respected because those who are running it are respected already in their own societies, and they have integrity, they have influence, and they are popular. So we think that doing that will create a semblance of peace, at least in the countryside. And of course, the third aspect of it is that if President Kiir exit with Riek Machar, then we will say all the armed forces of South Sudan, whether they are militias, whether they are former SPLA or whatever, will be put together and will be integrated to create one national army. And we'll need international support, a panel of international experts to work with the groups to organize and reconstruct the army. We want to have an army that is not loyal to anyone. I don't want to have an army so that if I'm president, I don't have to look on my back and say I have an army. If somebody challenge me, I'm going to shoot them. We want to end all of that. We want to have people who have no connection with the army running the country. And so if they mess up so bad, the army will come and interfere and say, hey, you, Mr. X, go home. You are messing up the country. And the army will have no reason to fear. So I think it is doable. What we are suffering in South Sudan is not that people hate each other so bad. It is absolute failure of leadership. Take, for example, our own state, Lakes. Rintwen went for a month now, and things are quiet. He has taken charge, and he's dispensing leadership, even though there are some issues that we are concerned about, such as extrajudicial killing that may be happening. we are concerned about that, but there is semblance of peace in the state. Those are the things that we had wanted from President Kiir's government, and he has not provided. So we believe that these things are doable by making just a simple adjustment in our leadership.
Brilliant. Thank you. What constitution arrangements do you have in place? So when you take over, the country will have some laws, at least during that interim period, to manage it.
Absolutely. We think that the current constitution we have is not that bad. It's just that it is not being implemented. But what our concern is that the constitution now has been diluted with the integration of the peace agreement into it. And so we definitely would not use that agreement, would not use that constitution. Is either we use the transitional constitution of South Sudan as it was in 2011 with some amendments, and then have what we call constituency elections. You have to have parliamentary elections before all the other elections, so that those people who come form what we call a constituency assembly of elected leaders who will then come and work on the permanent constitution. And once they have passed the permanent constitution, now we can have a real election. So we think that is what we could do. It's just a matter of how long that will take. But I think if the resources are in place, you can fairly quickly organize parliamentary elections. These presidential elections that would be very divisive and would need a lot of preparation. But we think that you really need to have elected representatives working on the constitution. And without that, you cannot have a credible constitution. So that is what we believe will need to happen if we succeed and there is a new transition in South Sudan. We will use the transitional constitution of South Sudan for that period until we have organized parliamentary elections. Thereafter, they will embark on making a new constitution, which will largely be based on some of the resolutions of the national dialogue. And once that constitution is passed by the parliament, it is then signed into law, and now it will govern the elections and the new government that will come through elections.
So while the elected assembly is putting the constitution together, who will be holding the government? Who will be governing the country?
Well, there will be, we believe that there will be a transitional leadership. This is something that has to be agreed by the political forces, but we think that there is a need for a joint military and civilian leadership to run the country for that period. You say 12 months, 18 months, or however long it is to get things done. And the transitional government will only have three things to do. One, they will have to return people who are displaced because of war, because of floods, because of whatever reason that may be. They have to go back to their homes. That means you need to stabilize security situation in the rural side. That means you have to bring on board all the armed groups and all the rebellions. And the second thing is that you need to conduct census, which will be the basis of constituent assembly elections. And then you need to conduct elections. So there will be three main responsibilities of that transitional leadership or council or whatever it may be, which will be negotiated by the political forces in the country. So I think that is doable. You could also have nearly a similar arrangement like Khartoum, where you have a military council, sovereign council, or whatever it is, and then you have a technocrat, government of technocrats running the day-to-day functions of the state.
That's right.
So I think this is doable. If you say let Thomas Chirilo come in, Gatwich Dual, Johnson Olony, plus the current leadership of the South Sudan Army and National Security and Police, and let them form the military council, and in a large proportion, and have a share of civilians also in that. And then you have a civilian government tasked to conduct elections, census, and to return people to their homes. I think those three tasks are not too difficult. They can be achieved with the support of international community. And then you have elections. And we think that after the elections, and you have a newly reconstructed national army that is made up of all the armed forces of South Sudan, whether be they rebels or government, they need to all have equal access to being members of South Sudan army, retrain and give a new doctrine, and separated from the political makeup of the country will be stable thereafter. And then the focus will then shift to revival of the economy. Let me stop there.
Okay, and now that you've mentioned the economy, the next question is, what happens if the coalition takes over and there's no money in the coffers? How are you going to run the country? How are you going to meet your promise that you are going to pay the civil servants and the military, the army that's not being paid now? You go there and you find no penny at the bank. What will you do?
I can tell you that South Sudan has a lot of money. It's just that it is being mismanaged. But yes, your question is relevant. If we get there and we found that the coffers of the Republic of South Sudan are empty, we know what the wage bill of the government is. It is not more than $40 million a month to pay people. So we think that we can get more than that. We can probably borrow some money from domestic sources to pay soldiers right away, give them food, and to pay civil servants, and to pay the diplomats. And we think that in the second month, I was a board member of the National Revenue Authority, and I know that we do generate a lot of domestic resources through taxation and through customs and duties. Those alone can actually pay the salaries of people on time every month without question. And then the small money that will come through oil will now be used for investment and to carry out broad activities of returning people to their homes and to maintain security in around the rural areas, and also to conduct the elections and census. I think those things are doable. Now, all the resources of the country will be going through the central bank. And if, for example, if we make 100 million or 200 million every month from our oil, and the government wage bill is 40 million, then you have a lot of you have a lot of resources left to carry out tangible major projects like completing the Rumbek Juba Highway, and completing the Juba Highway and Torit Juba Highway. Those are part of stabilizing the security, and also conducting resettling people and conducting elections and census. You need roads to do that. So I think the first month or the second month we can borrow if the whole thing is empty. But I think within the third and the fourth month we would be able to repay that loan and be able to pay people thereafter on monthly basis.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Awolich. I have my last question for you before my book comes in. And my question is, how do South Sudanese groups and individuals join the People's Coalition for Civil Action?
That is a wonderful question. There are three ways you can join. One way, we have an online form that people you click on it and you say you are signing the declaration of the coalition as your sign of commitment to join the coalition as an individual. Now, if you are an organization,
where is that form? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
It is an electronic document.
Yeah, where is it? Where can they access it now?
Okay, we can share that. I will share the link with you so that It is a link. It's a link created through Google.
Okay, so how do people find it if it's not from us? Where do people find it?
We will be putting it our website and our page, our Facebook page will be. I think they are up already. The Facebook page is up already. So we'll share those things with you so that you can share those with the audience. They can go to our page and click on the link.
Okay.
And that way you register your name and you click a button that says you are joining the coalition. So that is one. The second way is that if you are an organization, you have two ways of joining. One, you could join the coalition, because remember, this is a coalition. It is not one organization. Many organizations are included. So you can come with your own organization if you are a political entity or a civil society entity, and you say, my entity is joining the coalition. And you may issue a statement to that effect. And then we will make an MOU within the coalition itself, so that the activities of your organizations are now coordinated together with the activities of the coalition, so that we can work toward the same objective. The second option is that you forget about your organization and you say, I am full member of the coalition and I don't want to maintain my identity as another civil society. I just want to be a member of the coalition. That is another option. And for individuals, if you don't do the online thing, there are two ways you can join. You could call us and say, members of the coalition, I want to join you. And we will then accept you, and we will ask you what area would you like to contribute. If you are a communication person, if you are a politician, if you are whatever you want to, whatever you have as a contribution to the coalition, we will assign you. We will say, okay, you work with this department, work with this group of people doing this. The second part of it is that you could make a declaration. You could issue a statement and saying, I subscribe to the vision of the People's Coalition, and I have declared my membership to the coalition. So you could also do that, and we get that, and we reach out to you and give you directions on how you can become a meaningful participant of the coalition's activities.
Brilliant. I promise that was the last question, but I'm going to ask another question. My apologies.
Go ahead.
My question is, South Sudan is a fractured society. We are like the Balkans. The Europeans are familiar with ethnic divisions, and Africa obviously is very familiar. It's a problem all over the world, whether it's religious or ethnic divisions divide countries. South Sudan is extremely divided at the moment. It has been divided for a long time, perhaps 30 years, perhaps 40 years, going back to the late 1970s. Now, to be frank and to be honest to history, one big issue in South Sudan has been ethnic concept or perception of ethnic domination by one particular ethnic group, the Dinka. You yourself, you are a member of the Dinka community. How is the coalition planning to overcome this, and how far-reaching are you in representing the South Sudanese community in an equal way that would be attractive to our people, whoever they are?
Well, thank you very much. That is an important question. We take our lead from the national dialogue. The national dialogue of South Sudan had resolved that any leadership configuration in South Sudan, for example, the presidency, they said the presidency shall be made up of three people, the president and two deputies. And the reason for that, their logic is that if the president comes, for example, from Equatoria, then the two deputies must come, one from Upper Nile, the other from Equatoria. So that is one. Two, that one of the deputies, or if the leader is a woman, then the other two must be men, or at least one of them must be a woman. This is an agreement. that the people of South Sudan have agreed. That not only do you have regional and ethnic balance, you also have to have gender balance. So we are taking that as our model, that the coalition will always have representative of the people of South Sudan at all the levels, and including that transition we talk about. If the leader of the military council, for example, is a Dinka, for example, from Barghazal, then his one deputy must be from Upper Nile and must not be a Dinka, and one deputy must be from Equatoria. The same thing if you happen to have a prime minister, it will also be headed by someone from one of the regions and will be deputized like that. And obviously, the requirement of having one woman will be there as well. So we think that it doesn't hurt a country to think cautiously about pulling all its people forward together. And of course, the idea of domination is also exaggerated. It is exaggerated in a sense that obviously majority of people will be majority wherever it is. You go to the market, they will be there. You go to the army, they will be there. You go to school, they will dominate because of the sheer number. It's like having Chinese. There is nothing you can do to make Chinese less. They just happen to be many. And so we are not saying that there will not be, all South Sudan will be equal in numbers. That would be wrong. There will always, the Dinkas will be there. They will have more people. Maybe as time goes and things change, maybe another ethnic group will grow very fast and become the largest ethnic group. So, but you have to balance so that you make sure that even with your numbers, you don't take all the powers. You have to accommodate others, and you don't dominate the top place. For example, we are saying if the head of the military council is a Dinka, then the prime minister has to be from another ethnic community to head the civilian government. So I think these are issues that we have to grapple with, and we have to deal away with that politic of hatred. There is nothing we can do to reduce the large ethnic groups. They will be larger, but the way you configure the national power has to be that you are conscious of the other groups, that you don't capture the whole thing. It is not healthy for the country. We have to have equal opportunities to enjoy the privileges that our government has for all the people of South Sudan. So we'll be conscious of that. Right now in the coalition, we try to balance it as well, so that Kwela Agwerikwel and myself sign for Barghazal, and Raja Mohandis signed for the people of Equatoria, and Edward Sheikh signed for the people of Upper Nile. So we try to balance that as well, but there is a risk in the business that we are doing, so we cannot perfectly follow that model because when it's come for something dangerous, the issue of equality doesn't apply. It is those who are willing to commit to it who join. But we are working now. For example, we want to bring women on board to the leadership level of the People's Coalition for Civil Action. And they will just not be women, but they will be capable women who are also diverse in their ethnic and religious and regional dimensions. So we will, all these things are possible. Leadership is what counts here. And even in Great Britain, where you are, during the Brexit, the British people were sort of divided, because of the political rhetoric at that time, and because
deeply divided.
And
hasn't gone away.
With the Trump presidency, we have seen a lot of divisions. So leadership matters, and there are leaders that bring people together, but there are leaders that divide, and that is what seemed to be the biggest challenge in Africa.
Oh, thank you so much, Abraham. That's the end of my questions. It's been wonderful having you. I'll pass you on now to my colleague and friend, Mabur Chadar.
Thank you very much, Mawan, for those great questions.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you and good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Abraham.
Yes, Brother Mabur.
Thank you for the opportunity. My first question is, I believe you said in one of your interviews that you have support within the armed forces of South Sudan. Is that true?
Very true.
Okay. So if that is true, and you move the people to the streets in Juba, and of course your supporters within the armed forces, if they clash with the part of the armed forces that is still with the government, of course that will be a very tragic event in South Sudan. Are you ready for something like that?
Well, that is a very wonderful question. We are not ready for something like that, and we don't want something like that. The support that we ask of the army of South Sudan is not that they should have some people loyal to us and others loyal to President Kiir. We don't want that. All we ask from the army of South Sudan is to protect civilians. They don't need to shoot anything. All they have to do is say, don't shoot anybody, let people protest peacefully. That's what we are asking from them. We don't want them to come and shoot those who will try to shoot the people of South Sudan. Obviously, our leaders are not stupid. They know that if they kill civilians, there will be international ramifications for that. So they will not order the soldiers to shoot. And you know the way the military is made up is that they listen to orders. So if the commanders, who are now in charge of South Sudan Army and the National Security and Police, if they don't order them to shoot, they will not shoot. And so that is our understanding with the army. We say all we need from you is not to harm the civilians if they are protesting. And we don't want you to take power by force, because if they try to take power by force, that is when what you are asking for is likely to happen. But if the people of South Sudan are simply protesting, and the army, the police, of course, would have to be there to protect properties and to make sure that people are not on a rampage, and we'll ask our supporters not to commit any act of violence whatsoever and not to break anything or loot. But the military and the police would have to be deployed to protect the properties so that nobody goes to the market and loot, so that some negative elements would spark violence and all of that. That's all we are asking from them. And so it is our hope that the entire army leadership will side with the people on that day, and therefore there will be no one on the side of Salva Kiir and no one on our side. It will just be the army of South Sudan.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Also, you talked about your willingness, or you have already appealed to all the other opposition groups to join you. But during this interview, you have already pointed out that some of these oppositions don't necessarily, their agendas don't necessarily agree with your agenda. And that is true. Some of them were fighting, they have like tribal issues. Some of them are there like to revenge for whatever had happened in the past, and so on and so forth. And some of them are there just for power, for the opportunity to be absorbed again into the system. So how do you think there will be any difference dealing with these people?
Well, so we have to assume that at least we have one common thing, and that is we want political change in South Sudan. So we assume that we have common ground on that with the other opposition forces. Now, where the difference comes is what do we do to achieve that political change? For them, some of them have taken arms and they say they want to use the force of arms to bring about change. For us, we say no. The force of arms has proven disastrous. A lot of our people have been killed. Our properties have been destroyed. And we are actually destroying our workforce. The young people who are supposed to build South Sudan, we are wasting them on unnecessary war. So what we'll say is that if you are an armed group and your objective is to bring about political change in South Sudan, you stop you declare an end to rebellion and ask your members to join the People's Coalition for civil action to go and demand change in using civil non-violence mechanisms. And once we win, then your forces will be part of the South Sudan army. And those of you who are aspiring for politics, you go to the field and campaign and realize your political objective. So we would persuade them. That is our hope that armed rebellion is not going to bring about positive change, a change that requires unity of the people of South Sudan. And they have been doing it anyway, and they have not succeeded. And so it should not be so difficult to tell them that this is a very expensive endeavor. So you stop fighting and join the democratic and non-violent forces to bring about change. Obviously, they will not simply say, okay, we are throwing our guns away. They will say, we will see how you bring about your change. And when we are convinced, we will join you. And I think we will convince them through our activities. So what we don't want at all is any form of violence in South Sudan. We had enough of that. We really, really had enough of that. And so, which is why we are concerned about recent clashes between the forces of SPLM-IO. We really don't want them to continue on with that fighting. It is totally unnecessary. They have a number of other mechanisms, including non-violent mechanisms, to bring about political change, and that include dialogue. Vice President, first Vice President Riek Machar should sit down with Gadwij Dwal and do it and in front of the IO supporters and have an election. Who says that an armed rebellion doesn't do election? You could do that. And so if Gadwij Dwal believes that he is more popular than Dr. Riek Machar, and Duer believes that he is more popular than Gadwij Dwal and Riek Machar, they should call for an SPLM-IO convention and bring delegates, and then they can stand for election. I think that is the cheapest way of gaining the leadership of SPLM-IO. Instead of fighting it out, they will kill a lot of innocent Nuer children who will be divided among them. So we condemn that, and we call on all sides of the SPLM-IO and government of South Sudan, which is fueling that division within the SPLM-IO, to stop and to enter dialogue.
Do you have any example of democracy in a guerrilla setting in the world?
Well, there are so many examples of democracy that came about as a result of guerrilla warfare, and the entire
No,
African.
during the struggle, like in the bush, is there any example of democracy?
Yes, there are many. There are many armed guerrillas that have had internal elections to elect their leaders. There are many, including the ANC. The ANC had democratic institutions in place when they were struggling against the apartheid, and so were the other movements within the Southern African regions, even Kenya. The Kenyan leaders uh, gave opportunity to Jomo Kenyatta every single time he comes back. There was someone called James Gishuru who took charge, and then Jaramogi Oginga also who took charge. But when Jomo Kenyatta was released, they stepped down for him, and that was democratic exercise. So I think it is doable, but the SPLMIO situation is not the same. The SPLMIO has signed an agreement, and they are part of a government. So they are not actually entirely guerrilla. They are not in the bush entirely. Their leadership and military leadership, they signed an agreement, and they have been in government now for over a year. And so it is just a question that during the formation of the government, some of the SPLMIO leaders became disgruntled. And so you could argue that SPLMIO is no longer a guerrilla movement. It is actually a political party which can organize elections.
Okay, thank you. It seems it's obvious that your movement is an endeavor to emulate what had happened in northern Sudan, what had happened in Egypt, and in Tunisia, and so on and so forth. And Marwan has touched on the issue of the nature of the people of South Sudan at this juncture, particularly. I mean, they don't enjoy the same cohesion, as in all the other countries where a popular uprising has succeeded. So, don't you think that your thinking is a bit ambitious and unrealistic?
That is a very good question. Indeed, every movement has a very ambitious and very unrealistic expectation of what they could do. Even when those of Kervino Kwanyin rose up in Bor in 1983 to challenge the Sudan government, they were very ambitious. They knew that they could be defeated very badly. So they caused the locomotion, and then they withdrew. And then they took their time to mobilize, to organize, and to launch their campaign. And through that, now we have the Republic of South Sudan. And so every new movement usually is ambitious and unrealistic. But if the thinking is right, if the spirit is right, there is no reason why one cannot achieve that objective. In our case, we are actually not very ambitious or very unrealistic. What we are having in South Sudan, which you have cited, is the failure of leadership. It is the leadership that has failed, that has created those divisions. It is not that people are so bad, they hate each other so bad. Human beings are the same everywhere in the world. We are territorial. We like to cling to our own. Even those European countries, they fought massive ethnic wars, terrible wars, but in the end, they realized that they could actually benefit if they cooperate. And you know the wars between the French and the British and the uh, and the Germans and other wars. So human beings are the same. But what can destroy human society is a leadership. What can fix human society is leadership. If a leader arises and say, I want the people of South Sudan to unite, and we had an example under John Garang, even though the Sudanese government tried to divide the people of South Sudan, John Garang, with no government, no money, nothing, was able to unite the people of South Sudan simply with the word of his mouth and his leadership skills. And so we would not have been successful in our liberation struggle if we did not have a strong leader. And so we are saying those divisions are surmountable. They can be overcome with the right messaging. And we have started doing that. We are actually mobilizing the people of South Sudan. And what we are putting out is a message of unity. And so we think that we can unite the people of South Sudan, and our objective of bringing about change is within reach. It is not so difficult to do, and we have the capacity and the organization to do it. So we are assured of our success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My second last question is now you as PCCA have come up from nowhere, because I mean no one knew about you before, and you are in size, you are a smaller group, and let's say the miracle happened, and you took over, and you call all these opposition groups. You would be the weakest of them all, in terms of size, in terms of organization, in terms of facilities, whatever, resources. So doesn't it seem like you are pushing the country to unknown?
Well, sure, the PCCA is a new idea, but the people who are running it are not new. They are people who have been around. What I can tell you is this: we have no power whatsoever to change South Sudan if we cannot convince the people of South Sudan. So I can tell you that we will be out of business in no time if we are unable to persuade the people of South Sudan to come out and to rise up. Because there is no power. We don't have an army. We don't have money. We have no money. We have nothing. But the power that we are banking on, and which we have gotten an overwhelming support already, is the power of South Sudan to listen to our messages and to rise up. And if they do, then there is no minority there. We will be the dominant political force in the country, because the people of South Sudan will be the People's Coalition for Civil Action. And obviously, as I have already mentioned before, our intention is not to take over power. Maybe at the end of it, some of us who want to become political actors will then form a political party out of the coalition, and now use that political party as a platform to ask the people of South Sudan to confer power for their consent to lead. Some of us will go back to civil society because we are civil society, and some of us will go back to the academia. So in my view, even those political forces that you are talking about, they will have no reason not to abandon those political outfits that they have and join the People's Coalition because there is better opportunity. So we will be the largest political force in the country at the end of it all if we succeed. And of course, we are not looking for a miracle, because a miracle is something that happened that is totally unexpected. we expect this to happen because we have a message and we are organized to achieve this. And so we don't think we expect any miracle at all. The miracle will be if it doesn't happen, then that would be the miracle. But we are organized. We have a message of unity, and we have a vision that we have clearly laid out that we think will move South Sudan and bring a new day to the country. And so we are not taking the country to unknown. I have told you already that we have come from 2011 as critical observers of the South Sudan state and society. And you have seen that our inspiration came out of the 4 years of South Sudan national dialogue. And so we really will have no agenda other than implementing the resolutions of the South Sudan national dialogue, which is a clear agenda of the people of South Sudan. And so really we are taking the country to the known, which is the national dialogue resolutions. What we are afraid of, and that is why we want to change the country, is we are being led to unknown. And we have been led to unknown for the last 16 years. And now the unknown has become known. And that is the destination is destruction, division, corruption, and all of the misery that you know. We want to get rid of that. And we have a better alternative, which has been the agreement, a broad-based agreement of the people of South Sudan through the South Sudan National Dialogue. That is what inspired us. So we did not just pop out, we pop out of the South Sudan National Dialogue and other experiences that we have outlined earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham Awolich. My last question is about the national dialogue. You have been referring to it a lot during this interview. And actually, over the last few days, when you were out there on the media, I have learned that you were instrumental in the proceedings of the national dialogue and the formulation of its documents, including the final resolutions. One of the most interesting or most exciting resolutions of the dialogue, national dialogue, was the one that asked President Kiir and Riek Machar, Vice President Riek Machar, not to be part of the political process going forward. This to me sounds counterintuitive to ask the person or the people who invited you to the party to ask them to leave the party and you continue without them. In other words, democracy, if you were asking for democracy and elections, that is the job of elections and democracy to sort them out. So why was the dialogue so in a hurry? What were they fearing if they are, you know, unpopular leaders like what is being said now everywhere? Then why don't you just go with them to the elections and defeat them there, and give them the right to compete in the democracy?
You know, that is a very excellent question, and it actually gives me an opportunity to make a larger point. Yeah. Your question is right. First of all, why was the national dialogue created? The national dialogue was created to answer one question: what went wrong? And so now, in the process of finding what went wrong, the issue of political deadlock, as I have already talked about, that Riek Machar wants to be president and President Kiir wants to be president. There can only be one person at a time to be president. So that is one thing that has come up as a finding, a major finding to what went wrong in the country, that it is power struggle and it is leadership failure that has caused all the crises that have happened in the country. Now, the more logical question that arises out of that, if there was a political failure and there is a political deadlock, who caused that? And obviously the answer is that the political deadlock is between President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. And the leadership failure, of course, is no one else has ever led South Sudan other than President Salva Kiir, who was deputized by Dr. Riek Machar for a good number of years. So the most logical thing to do then was that if you are going to address, because you were asked to find out and come up with solutions to what you have found out. And so if you found that there was political failure and leadership failure, and you found that there is a political deadlock, then you have to eliminate the cause of that. And the cause of that is obviously President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. So what the national dialogue had asked them to do was that they could either step down now so that the country can move forward and for you to break the political deadlock, or they finish the transition on condition that they should not contest. And mind you, that we should have, South Sudan became independent in 2010, and we have not had elections. Why? This is because President Salva Kiir doesn't want to have elections. And probably Dr. Riek Machar doesn't want to have elections. And so your question would be more relevant. Anyone can beat them in an election if the election is free and fair, and if they were to accept the election to happen. But they will not give you that opportunity to have an election. For example, this transition now says that we are supposed to have election in 2023 or 2022. It will not happen. President Kiir will not allow it. Each time we are closer to an election, they will manufacture sort of a form of violence, like what is happening now is in the IO. It may push actually the agreement back. They have given the government 7 days to renegotiate the 2018 peace agreement. Otherwise, they will take the country back to war. And so we believe that since President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar are not willing to have an election, and they are not giving up this issue of power, then the best thing to do, if the country is to move forward, is to take them out of the political scene so that you eliminate the political deadlock and you eliminate the leadership failure, and you can have fresh elections, including them picking their own candidates. And so we are not saying they should not run for election. We are saying if they run for election within the context of the political deadlock that you know, if President Kiir loses an election or Dr. Riek Machar loses an election, and he goes out there and say, the election has been stolen, what do you think will happen? People will go back to war. That is as simple as that. And that is precisely why we think that having them run against each other is a recipe for a return to war. And if you want the country to get out of war, you really have to deal with the issue head on. And so it is not that people are afraid that President Kiir and Riek Machar are popular. They are not. They have failed. It is that they will not allow you, because they have state power in their hands. They will not allow you to organize that election. And if they were to allow you to organize that election, they will rig it. They will steal it. And if you talk, they will shoot you. So there will be no there will be no level playing field. And so there are two solutions to this. One is for them not to run, because if they run, the country will go back to war. Two is for them to step down and leave the political space entirely clean, and we can reorganize it again. Those are the only two options we have. Otherwise, The third option is we accept to live in a country like that, a country of war, a country of displacement, a country of division, a country of corruption, and build a dictatorship, a weak, regionless, directionless dictatorship. Those are the options you have. And in my case, and my colleagues, we don't want to live in a country that is there now. It is not sustainable. It is miserable. It is terrible. Everybody wants to leave their country and go to another country. And so we want to have a country that we love to live in. And in order to achieve that country, President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar must leave. That is the only way you can get out of that crisis. The crisis is so entrenched around them that there is no other way you can fix it. That's why we said another solution is have popular uprising. Let the people of South Sudan rise up and reject all these warlords, all these leaders who have brought death and pain and destitution to our people. And the people of South Sudan have a capacity to do that. And that's what we are asking them to do. And we are asking you also to join us and to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham Awolich. It has been a pleasure to have you tonight. If Marwan doesn't have any other question, Marwan, do you have any other question that came up during our questioning?
Not at all. I've been listening with concentration and delight to the intriguing discussions that took place between the two of you and the information that Awolich has given us. We are privileged. We are really privileged here at RBC TV, aren't we, Mabur, to have had
we have.
To have had you,
Yes.
have had our brother Akec Awolich, and good luck to you and your colleagues. We will, as we said earlier during your absence, we also want to listen to the side of the government. It's a struggle for us. It would be incredible to have someone like the name just went from me.
You could have Michael McQuay or
Attenuwek
or anyone.
Yeah, Attenuwek. We can have him. We can have him to give the side of the government.
Yes.
For us to just have the right balance and to continue the South Sudanese to have fruitful discussions. In fact, I was telling Mabur earlier that we should be having this discussion in Juba. Me and Mabur should be based there, interview you, and next day we discuss Makunulu, and that's how our country, our society has always been. But unfortunately, we are not allowed to have that. But we'll try to reach them in any case. We appreciate your attendance with us.
Thank you very much. I'm privileged to have this space, and I thank you. I want to thank all of you at the RBC. I can tell you that these initiatives, no matter how small they seem, they are part of a broader public of building our country, and I appreciate you for that leadership, and I look forward to regular engagement with you. And even if it is necessary, I would be happy to debate a representative of government here at RBC, if there is anyone that is willing to do so, to challenge me on my ideas. I would enjoy that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We hope we'll be able to do something like that if they respond to us. We will definitely try. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Abraham. Goodbye.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Well, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.